with Juan Gonzalez.
And welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.
Juan, you did a piece in the New York Daily News on the trial of the police detectives involved with the death of Sean Bell.
Yes, so the trial started this week for the November 2006 50-shot barrage that killed Sean Bell and wounded two of his friends the morning before he was to be married. And basically what happened was the most dramatic stuff that's happened so far in the first few days of the trial is the testimony of the first eyewitness to the actual shooting, to a portion of the shooting, the Mercenaries Payne, who was actually an exotic dancer who was at the nightclub where Bell was holding his bachelor's party. And as she was leaving the bar, she claimed she saw police, or she saw a van, not marked, an unmarked van, suddenly speed around the corner, crash into Bell's car as Bell was pulling out. And she claims that one person, the driver of the van, immediately jumped out and started shooting. So she directly contradicts the police version on a number of key facts. The police claim that there was a warning from another plainclothes officer who was approaching the van. They claim he fired first, only after Bell tried to run him over with his car. So she doesn't see anyone trying to run over an individual, just sees the police van crashing into him, and then she says that the first cop started opening up and firing. So the major contradictions between her testimony and what we've heard so far. But of course, this is just the beginning of the trial, and we'll have to wait and see. It's expected to last a few weeks.
And Nicole Paltry-Bell also spoke in the trial.
Yes, and she gave a dramatic testimony at the very beginning of the trial as to the last time she saw Sean Bell and when she heard of him. But she actually obviously was not a witness to any of the actual events, but she did provide a very emotional beginning to the trial.
Well, we'll certainly continue to follow this trial.
Well, now we turn to our first segment. A senior foreign policy advisor to leading Democratic presidential candidate Barack Obama has told The Nation magazine that if elected, Obama will not rule out using private security companies like Blackwater Worldwide in Iraq. That's the lead sentence from a new article by independent journalist Jeremy Scahill. The advisor to Obama also said that the Illinois senator does not plan to sign on to legislation that seeks to ban the use of these forces in U.S. war zones by January 2009, when a new president will be sworn in.
Democracy Now! Correspondent Jeremy Scahill joins us now in the Firehouse Studios, author of the best-selling book Blackwater, The Rise of the World's Most Powerful Mercenary Army. His latest article in The Nation is called Obama's Mercenary Position. It appears in this issue of The Nation. Welcome to Democracy Now! So what did you find out, Jeremy?
Well, I started looking at Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton's Iraq plans, and one of the things that I discovered is that both of them intend to keep the green zone intact. Both of them intend to keep the current U.S. Embassy project, which is slated to be the largest embassy in the history of the world. I mean, I think it's 500 CIA operatives alone, 1,000 personnel, and they're also going to keep open the Baghdad airport indefinitely. And what that means is that even though the rhetoric of withdrawal is everywhere in the Democratic campaign, we're talking about a pretty substantial level of U.S. forces and personnel remaining in Iraq indefinitely. In the case of Barack Obama, I wanted to focus in on what his position is on private military contractors, particularly armed ones like those that work for Blackwater. And the reason I focused on Obama instead of Hillary on this is because Barack Obama has actually been at the forefront of addressing the mercenary issue in the Congress. In February of 2007, this was way before the Nicer Square massacre where Blackwater forces killed 17 Iraqis and wounded 20 others. In February of 2007, Barack Obama sponsored legislation in the Senate that sought to expand U.S. law so that
this is just after he got into the Senate, right?
This is not this. Well, this was in 2007. This was just this was a year ago, and so this was a major piece of legislation by Obama, and it was done in concert with Representative David Price from North Carolina in the House, a Democrat. And Obama's legislation basically said, we realize that there are loopholes in the law that allow Blackwater and other contractors to essentially get away with murder. And so what we need to do is make it so that U.S. law applies to not only Defense Department contractors, but State Department contractors like Blackwater. If they murder someone in Iraq, we can prosecute them back in the United States. Now, that legislation hasn't passed at this point, and it may never pass. I mean, the fact is that the Bush administration actually issued a statement opposing that legislation, and I want to read to you what Bush said. He said that law would have, quote, intolerable consequences for crucial and necessary national security activities and operations. And so I started to look at this reality. Obama is saying he wants to keep the embassy. Obama is saying he wants to keep the Green Zone. Obama is saying he wants to keep the Baghdad airport. Who's guarding U.S. diplomats right now at this largest embassy in the history of the world? Well, it's Blackwater, Triple Canopy, and DynCorp. It's these private security companies. And so I started talking to some of the Obama campaign people, and it really took days for them to actually get back to me and provide someone to talk to me on the record. I started doing interviews with some of his people, and they said, well, we can't answer these questions. And so finally I talked to a senior foreign policy person who said, yes, the reality is that we can't rule out, we won't rule out using private security forces. And I said, well, Senator Obama has identified them as unaccountable, and the reality is his law may not pass before he takes office if he wins, and so Obama could potentially be using forces that he himself has identified as both unaccountable and above the law. Long pause, right. And so the situation right now is that Obama seems to have painted himself into a corner on this issue, because the reality is Obama's people are saying, well, we're going to increase funding to the State Department's Diplomatic Security Division. They say, ideally, the people we want to be guarding U.S. diplomats in Iraq will be fully burdened U.S. government employees who are accountable to U.S. law. But the irony right now is that the war machine is so radically privatized that there are about 1,100 mercenaries doing diplomatic security in Iraq right now. There are only 1,400 diplomatic security agents in the entire world, and only 36 of them are in Iraq.
Well, let me ask you, in terms of this whole issue of mercenaries in general, I mean, are we facing the possibility that a Democratic president would, in essence, reduce the troops but increase the mercenaries? Well,
Juan, this is a great question. It was one of the reasons why I started looking at this. I want to read you a quote here. Joseph Schmitz, who's one of the leading executives in the Blackwater Empire, recently said this: there's a scenario where we could, as a government, the United States could pull back the military footprint, and there would then be more of a need for private contractors to go in. So apparently these contractors see a silver lining in that scenario. The reality is right now that these forces are one of the most significant threats to Iraqis in the country. I mean, we've seen scores of incidents where they've shot at them, et cetera. But as you know, Juan, this is a bipartisan industry. I mean, Bill Clinton really gave rise to this phenomenon of the military contractors. We know that Dick Cheney was running Halliburton in the 90s. Who was giving Dick Cheney all of those contracts? Well, it was Bill Clinton. I mean, the Democrats have long been good for the war contracting industry. There's a reason why Hillary Clinton is the #1 recipient of campaign contributions from the defense industry. #2 is John McCain. Obama's #4. Chris Dodd is ahead of him. It's very interesting. It's a bipartisan phenomenon.
Well, let's talk beyond the mercenaries, beyond the military contractors, about their policies in Iraq. I wanted to turn to an excerpt of Tuesday night's Democratic debate in Cleveland, Ohio. This is NBC News Washington Bureau Chief and moderator of Meet the Press, Tim Russert.
You both have pledged the withdrawal of troops from Iraq. You both have said you'd keep a residual force there to protect our embassy, to seek out al-Qaeda, to neutralize Iran. If the Iraqi government said, President Clinton or President Obama, you're pulling out your troops this quickly, you're going to be gone in a year, but you're going to leave a residual force behind? No. Get out. Get out now. If you don't want to stay and protect us, we're a sovereign nation. Go home now. Will you leave?
Well, if the Iraqi government says that we should not be there, then we cannot be there. This is a sovereign government, as George Bush continually reminds us. Now, I think that we can be in a partnership with Iraq to ensure the stability and the safety of the region, to ensure the safety of Iraqis, and to meet our national security interests. But in order to do that, we have to send a clear signal to the Iraqi government that we are not going to be there permanently, which is why I have said that as soon as I take office, I will call in the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We will initiate a phased withdrawal. We will be as careful getting out as we were careless getting in. We will give ample time for them to stand up, to negotiate the kinds of agreements that will arrive at the political political accommodations that are needed. We will provide them continued support. But it is important for us not to be held hostage by the Iraqi government in a policy that has not made us more safe, is distracting us from Afghanistan, and is costing us dearly, not only and most importantly in the lost lives of our troops, but also the amount of money that we are spending that is unsustainable and will prevent us from engaging in the kinds of investments in America that will make us more competitive
Senator
and more
Clinton,
safe.
if the Iraqis said, I'm sorry, we're not happy with this arrangement, if you're not going to stay in total and defend us, get out completely, they are a sovereign nation, you would listen.
Absolutely. And I believe that there is no military solution that the Americans, who have been valiant in doing everything that they were asked to do, can really achieve in the absence of full cooperation from the Iraqi government.
Let me ask you this,
and
Senator.
they need to take responsibility for themselves.
I want to ask both of you this question then. If this scenario plays out and the Americans get out in totality and al-Qaeda resurges,